Welcome back to the Legacy Podcast, guys. In today's episode, we have Emile Steenveld. He is a business and relationship coach, leadership consultant, and yoga teacher who now lives in Bali and has multiple retreat centers there. Thank you so much, Emile, for taking the time out to speak with me today and my audience. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Vipul.
No problem at all. So just jumping straight into it, the first thing probably everyone wants to know, and the first thing that I'm curious to know, is how did you actually go about finding your purpose?
I would say about maybe 15 years ago, I was picking up a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Now, my mum's a psychologist, so I grew up, as you can see, I've got books behind me. These are all psychology books, and I grew up reading these books, and you know, I was always a deep thinker, Vipul. So always looking for answers, always looking at why I did things differently, and always wondering why people reacted to me differently. And, you know, I was a school captain in basketball and very popular, but at the same time, very sensitive. Now, I remember, you know, I came back from my first modeling trip and, you know, my mum was like, do you want to do this course? And it was a self-development course. And I went there and I did. It was a 3-day course, and you know, there's experimental workshops, and there's this woman talking on stage, and she's telling you about why you do certain things and why you react to certain things, and it made so much sense. And I remember myself looking at this woman on stage and going, I could see myself doing that. Now, at the time, Vipul, I just got into modeling, so I was kind of like, you know what, I'm doing the modeling thing. It's really exciting. People are giving me a lot of compliments. I'm getting attention. And I was actually seeking approval. I was seeking acceptance. Now, I was saying to you before, along the journey of modeling, this is what propelled me into going deeper into coaching, is because the more I learned about myself through rejection, I was so scared of rejection. What does the universe do? It goes, here, have a job that will give you 90% rejection. I had to learn to accept myself. You know, I got treated a certain way because of how you looked. And this is not just like in the modeling industry. This is life. This is in the world. Based on how you look, on how your status is and where you came from, people are going to treat you a certain way. Now, when I decided, after doing that course at Landmark, it was actually called Landmark Forum. And I'm not sure if you heard of it. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay. So after doing that course, I was like, I'm going to go further and study coaching while I'm doing the modeling, because it's great to keep stimulating my mind. And you know, along the journey, I just kept reading more books and more books and more books. And I studied a course, and I did this online course. It was 6 years, and it was with the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. And I didn't actually know I was going to do relationship coaching until I was actually doing the Camino de Santiago, which is the walk, you walk from the south of France to the west coast of Spain.
Yeah, I actually, the first time I came across that was when I read one of Paulo Coelho's books. So yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So me, I did that walk, and I did it with my father, and it was such a critical time for me because I was just finishing my course. I wasn't sure what I was doing with the modeling. I've already been modeling 10 years, and I modeled in Hong Kong, New York, LA, Barcelona, Hamburg, all over. And I fulfilled my dream. Like, I did it. And I was like, what's next? Like, what's going to fulfill me? What's going to make my heart tick? And I really, really did go back to remembering that time when I saw that woman on stage and her giving these talks, and I was like, I really would love to do this. So I went further into my studies, and I was just about to finish, and I was like, well, what am I going to go in? Like, what am I going to focus on? And, you know, growing up, you know, I grew up with a South African dad, South African mom, and, you know, they came to Australia during the apartheid. It wasn't a very easy time for them. And, you know, my dad was very stubborn, strong-minded, you know, his way. This is it, hard work, determination. You stay in this job and you work it and work it and work it, and then you get a raise. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
You know, do you even like it? And I was like, his way of thinking was very old school, and I was like, it's boring to me, you know. But he couldn't understand my way, where I was like traveling around the world modeling and then getting paid to do certain things. And even when coaching came up, he was like, well, how do you make money?
Yeah.
And I remember being on this walk, you know, and growing up with my dad, I was telling you, I didn't have a great relationship with him. And what I realized after doing these seminars is that I had to take responsibility for how I was showing up in the relationship. That was the biggest piece of freedom I got, because I was blaming him for the way our relationship was going. And this is what we do as human beings. We blame other people. We blame external circumstances. And when we do that, it takes our power away immediately. When I took full responsibility for how I was showing up, and I started to accept him for who he was, that allowed our relationship to shift and to move. He started showing up differently because he didn't feel judged. And it was actually along that walk that I was like, it's relationships. If you have a great relationship with yourself, you will automatically have a great relationship with other people, and you will form great relationships with other people in business. It's about connecting. It's about being authentic and being real. And this is the thing these days. There's so many entrepreneurs around the world. Everyone's trying to make it. Everyone's trying to get up. But if we just learn to connect from an authentic space and say, hey, this is what I want to create. Like, you reached out to me and we're like, hey, this is what I'm about. This is what I want to create. And I was like, this is awesome. Let's do it. Then something authentic can come from that, from going in to give value. So that's pretty much, that's a short version of how I found basically my purpose. Right?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's interesting because as you're talking about that walk, that's something that I was thinking of planning to do at some point as well. So how long ago was it that you actually you took that walk?
It was 3 years ago, and I would advise anybody to do it. You know, I teach mindfulness and meditation, and think of mindful walking for a month. you got a lot of time to think. And the great thing about that is you know, I got to see so many different sceneries. I saw different weather. I walked through everything, through days where it was hot, through days it was cold, through days it was raining. And the beautiful thing is that this is life. Some days it's going to be sunny, some days it's going to be hailing, some days it's going to be cloudy. And this is the way our moods are as well. And this is why mindfulness is so important, is when we are mindful about our thoughts and feelings and emotions and not getting caught up in them. That's when we experience joy. And that walk was, I met the most incredible people from all over the world. And I even interviewed people. You know, it's funny, I interviewed people on my GoPro and it didn't come out. Like, I actually want to do it again because I want to go and make a mini movie about it. I interviewed some amazing people, but the sound didn't come out quality when I got it back. But you meet people from all over the world. And you know, it's funny, the majority are older people, not young people.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it seems like when you went on the walk, you know, you weren't that old compared to some of the other people I'm sure that were on the walk. And, you know, for myself thinking about it, it surprises me that it's me being 25 and I'm thinking about doing things like that. It's like, I want everyone to start at least thinking about other things that are out there in the world that they could be pursuing, not just being caught up in, you know, as we were talking about before, in just the now and today, because it's thinking about going on those walks and actually figuring out that they even exist, things like that exist. It's because you're opening your mind to different possibilities to see what else is out there, thinking the bigger picture. You know, otherwise you wouldn't come across things like that. You know, if you're on a night out drinking or socializing, that's not a topic of conversation that comes up typically, you know. So
it's definitely not. People when people go, you walked for a month, they look at me like you're crazy. And when I think about it now, I was like, oh, it's pretty dope, because it's something I'll never forget. Like, you're walking for 8 to 10 hours a day, and you're meeting incredible people. Like, there's still people I still speak to, like, that are in these little villages. You know, and the beautiful thing about that is it grounds you so much, because you really start to see the world differently when you stop everything and allow yourself to be and that's your process, and you notice your body moves differently, and the pain I went through with my feet and massaging, I call it self-love, the massaging I was doing to myself every day and nurturing myself every day to make sure that I can keep going. And the mental stress, like my dad, for example, like needed to know like what's tomorrow's plan, what's tomorrow's map. And for me, I was like, I just need to keep walking until I reach 8 hours, and I know I'm going to get to the next town.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't want to. That's the difference with all of us. Some people like, I need to plan, I need to make sure I've, and some people, and for me personally, I just like to just go with it.
Yeah, definitely. No, 100%. I see that as well. That's the same with me and some of the people that I know, including my dad. He's like that as well. He's like, you need a structure and a plan, and you need to be able to foresee every step just so you feel safe to keep going. And it's funny because those are the people that are, they're not closed-minded, but they're the ones that find it harder to see different perspectives and to almost appreciate the bigger picture, because the way you're living life, as you were saying, like your dad was questioning you in terms of how you're going to make money from coaching, how you're making money traveling the world. They're all like sort of bigger picture things that are not that's sort of almost esoteric. They're not really done, so it's harder for people like that to consume ideas that are not normal almost. So and just going back to your point earlier, when we're talking about good and bad, it's the same with the weather as well, isn't it? As you said, you experience different weathers every day, but it's like, why is the sun good and when it starts to rain it's bad? It's just weather. It's just, it goes up and down, and that's just how it is.
Yeah. If one of the biggest myths people have is that we need to be happy all the time. The myth is I need to be happy and I should not experience bad feelings. And this is the first thing I do when I'm coaching people is let's get acquainted with your shadow side as well as your light side, with the stuff you don't like about yourself as much as the stuff you do like about yourself. Because if we can accept the stuff we don't like about ourselves and give that nurturing as much as the stuff as we do like, we can stop pushing those negative feelings away and actually accept that they're there, acknowledge them, be with them, nurture them. Like a sore on my shoulder. I had this sore that I had. It was like a picture your shoulder of a bull, and you look at it, and it's got this sore there, and it says that I'm not good enough. And imagine that I accept that it's there, and I start to give it nurturing, and I start to give it love instead of trying to deny that it's there and hide it. How would I show up differently?
Yeah. I 100%. I can 100% relate to that. And before I get into it, I just want to ask you, what happened when you started giving yourself more self-love and accepting that?
The acceptance is what transforms people. Like people go, oh, but I don't like that about me, and I don't want to share that. And what they're doing is they're rejecting a part of themselves. And every time you reject a part of yourself, or every time you try to hide it, avoid it, or pretend not to know about it, it's like you're rejecting a small child. And imagine there's a child in the room that's saying, hey, I just want attention. I just want some love. I just want some nurturing. And you're like, no, not today. I don't have time for you. Yeah. And every time you do that, that child screams louder and louder and louder, to the point where you're going to have to pay attention to it one day. So the moment I actually acknowledge that child and go, hey, I can see you. I'm going to acknowledge you. Thank you. What happens? The child starts to give gratitude. Thank you. It gives love back. It gives that feeling of like, there's an acceptance there. What happens when you feel accepted when you walk into a room versus people judging you? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Nobody likes it. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and understood. So the moment I started accepting it, that I had that, what I did was, how I do it, I give it a name, Vipul. And the first part of that, because what happens when we have an ill feeling or an ill thought, we fuse with it. And what happens when you fuse with it, something, that turns into another thought, and that feeling turns into another thought, and that feeling turns into another thought, and it goes into this rabbit hole where you get stuck, right? Now, if you let go and allow it, and you actually give it a name, I give it a name, right? So I could be like, okay, here comes the I'm not good enough thought again. And the moment that thought comes up, I notice it every time I go to challenge myself to go to a new level. and it wants to try and belittle me. It tries to try and keep me small, because this is what the mind does. The mind wants to keep us small. It wants to keep us safe. Comfort zone. The comfort zone is called the zombie zone, or the missed opportunity zone. That's all the comfort zone is called. Because every time you're in the comfort zone, you're not getting the next opportunity. You're missing the next opportunity. You've closed off.
Yeah.
So the moment you name it, the moment you can catch it, and this is why mindfulness is so important, is because the thing with mindfulness is just the ability to see your thoughts, feelings, and emotions without judgment. So every time that thought comes up, I notice I'm having the thought, I acknowledge it, I don't ignore it, I acknowledge it. Sometimes I like to feel it. He's just trying to take over and keep me calm and keep me in my comfort zone. And then I go and I do what I need to do anyway. I continue what I said I'm going to do. I follow through with my word.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, being mindful is something that I've tried to practice, and it's definitely helped because, especially with fear, a lot of people feel like they shouldn't feel fear, or that it's a negative thing. But every time I feel it, I try and train myself, and I'm hoping that it becomes stronger and more natural to me. But every time I feel it, I acknowledge it, and then I use it as a sense of a positive push almost. So I think, okay, now that I felt this, I have to go and do it, because that means breaking the next barrier. It's not like, I felt fear, which means turn around. It's, because it gets confusing, because you obviously have your old brain that tells you to run away from negative or confrontational situations, but then you have to fine tune that, because you live in the modern world now. You're not there. You're not living in the jungle anymore.
There's no saber-toothed tigers, man, like back in the day.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I was reading something before. It said, think about what you want, not what you don't want. Now, you think about that saying. Think about what you want, not what you don't want. Now, a lot of people think, I'm having a negative thought. Oh, no, I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to happen. And wherever my focus goes, my energy goes, that's where my focus goes. And that grows, right? So it's like, if I'm constantly thinking about what I don't want, I'm creating that. So how about I acknowledge it? I notice I'm having this thought again. Now, we have 60,000 thoughts a day. We can't be all of them. Right? Like, if I was to be every single thought, I would be mad. Literally mad. So you would recognize that we are experiencing having thoughts. And some are going to be powerful and some are going to be weak. Yeah. And notice that it's going to give you reasons to keep you safe. But if we actually experience, I'm noticing I'm having this thought every time I get challenged, there's your story. Notice it, name it. And every time you do that, you overcome it. Because if you keep going to do what you need to do anyway, you take the power away from that thought. And it doesn't rule you, you rule it. Yeah. And then guess what? Another one will come.
Yeah.
But the more you practice, you recognize that every single person has these thoughts. I was watching a documentary the other day on Usain Bolt. He's the fastest man in the world. And before he goes out and races, he's having a thought, I could lose. But then he overcomes it and goes, but I'm not going to be focusing on my stride. I'm going to be practicing he has his mantra and what he does and his steps to overcome that. It's always going to come and try and rain on your parade.
Yeah, it's just about understanding the mind, and I see that to be more and more important now, more than the physical achievements that we have. It's more about sorting yourself out of here and understanding how this actually works, and then being able to move forth. I was watching a TED talk with, have you heard of Marissa Peer? She's a coach in the UK, Marissa Peer.
Yes, I was actually just listening to a podcast the other day with Joel.
Oh, right, yeah, so did I. So that urged me to listen to one of her TED Talks, and she's talking about collaborating with your mind. And she breaks it down in such a simple way that it just makes you think that, of course, it's one of those moments where you think, oh, of course, that makes sense. It's common sense, because everything you tell your mind, it's eavesdropping on what you're how you talk to yourself, and taking instructions directly from what you're saying. And so it links in with another book I was reading, The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, it's one of my favorites, actually. And I used to teach courses on it.
Yeah, and he talks about being strict with your word, and you don't realize that until you actually understand how it affects everything that happens with your behavior thereafter, because as your words start coming out, it changes the way you think. The way you think affects the way you behave, and then it just goes around in a circle. So until you understand the process, you can't change it.
It is, and it does start. I actually have it written up here. Be careful of your thoughts, for they become your words. Be careful of your words, for they become your actions. Be careful of your actions, for they become your habits. And be careful of your habits, for they become your character. And be careful of the character, for that becomes your destiny.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite sayings. I have it just written behind my computer, and you know, it really is. But you know, when it does come down to understanding, okay, noticing you're having the thought, but noticing how to catch it. And this is the thing, is don't try and get rid of it. It's naturally going to occur, and what you resist will persist. It's like a weed. If you don't want to experience it and you keep denying it that it's there, guess what? It keeps growing, right? And then it goes into the body. And what I was going to say as well is a great way to move it is to move your body. Your body needs to move as well. We are energy. Like the body, it's not just the mind. The body's connected to the mind's connected to the body, and it needs to move. We need to move the body. You need to move the breath, because what happens is that feeling gets stored in our parts of our bodies. So, for example, I love going to have massage. I have acupuncture. I have a guy in Bali that works on our retreats that does organ adjustment, and he literally will look at your body, the pool, and push on a certain point, and he knows exactly where the knot is before you even touch it. You know, and it's amazing. And then he gets you to repeat an affirmation, and as he's repeating it, you're feeling the energy move out of the body. And this is how it is. Like, we're speaking to our bodies. Like when I teach yoga, when I used to teach yoga, I used to be like, go through when they're doing the last pose, which is the Shavasana, they do a full body relaxation. And I'd be like, okay, tense and relax your toes, tense and relax your feet, tense and relax your calves, your shins, your hips, your stomach. And I go through the whole body basically. And then after that, tense and relax, because you know, you feel the tension when you tense everything, and then relax it. And then I'll go through the body and I go, okay, now relaxing your toes, your feet, your ankles, your calves, your shins. And I want you to tell every time you say it, I'm relaxing my calves, I'm relaxing my shins, I'm relaxing my thighs and my hamstrings. And they have the best Shavasana after that. 10 minutes where they're knocked out, where they've fully let go of their body. Because if you tell your body I'm relaxed, it will listen. Just like if I say I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, it will listen.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So that brings me on to talking about yoga. You said that you've been teaching it from before. I mean, how did you actually get into that? And is that something that you've always been interested in, or did you actually teach yourself that recently?
Yeah, yoga started when I started personal development. It was 10 years ago, and I started yoga at a similar time, so it was a double whammy. And you know, personal development is exactly the same as yoga, just without the westernized form.
Yeah.
And what yoga taught me about the body was noticing I could break limitations without even someone telling me, just by me practicing on the mat. And when I got into postures, noticing when I fell over and then trying it again. And that breaks a limitation, not just in the body, but in the mind, because sometimes I'll get in there and I'll go into to do a posture and I notice I'm not strong enough yet. And then I practice more and more.
Yeah.
And then maybe a week or 2 weeks later, I'm strong enough to hold it. And then you have a mini breakthrough and you're like, oh, I did it.
Yeah.
Whereas your mind was like 2 weeks ago was like, oh, I couldn't do that posture. But and this is the thing, is how you do one thing is how you do most things. So what I noticed is that when I was on the mat, the more I practiced, the more I would get in tune with my body. Now it's funny, Vipul, I've gone through stages now where I don't practice yoga nearly as much. I do a lot more meditation. And yoga is just there to get your spine ready for you to sit for meditation. That's the purpose of yoga. And it's to keep your spine healthy, because that's your main energy channel. Now, when I first got into yoga, I was doing Vipassana in in Leh Ladakh in the Himalayas, with a monk, and we were sitting for like 15-hour days where we couldn't talk, and we just had to sit for meditation. And then we had one day where we could do yoga, and then 1 hour where we could do yoga. And I remember experiencing that 1 hour of pure joy because I could move.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, I'm going to teach this. You know, I was already doing yoga, but I was like, I want to teach this. And what's really interesting, Vipul, is that, you know, when you really get into the practice of doing yoga, like I love to combine yoga, and then one day I do training, or I surf. So the different movements of like stretching and breathing and moving with the breath. But then I might do a next day where I do boxing, where I'm just like running out of breath. But I'm overcoming another limitation.
Yeah.
So for me, yoga has been like, it's probably the last year and a half I haven't done it as frequent, but meditation has taken over, where I meditate daily.
Yeah, it's just like it's almost like a natural progression, isn't it? Like from the activities that you did and then the activities you're doing now. It's like as you were doing personal development, it's funny how you got into yoga and started becoming more in tune with your body as you were training your mind through the books you were reading. So I'm curious, what type of yoga is it that you do? Because I actually did Kundalini yoga for a little while, so I haven't been doing it recently. I wish I could do it more often. I'm definitely going to try and implement it, because I definitely found that very helpful. So was that the type of yoga, or?
I was doing Hatha, which is a traditional. Hatha yoga was a traditional form of yoga, and then a lot of other yogas stem from that.
Oh, right. Okay, sure. And so, how did you actually go from like doing modeling to then end up in the Himalayas?
I know. Well, it's funny, you know, because, you know, we spoke about values earlier, and I was in New York, and I just got signed to Wilhelmina Model, which was one of the top agencies at the time in New York. And they just were about to sign me for another 3 years and give me, because I'm obviously Australian citizen, so they were about to give me a new O1 visa. And I said, yeah, just give me a sec. I just need to go to India, because I had a friend of mine in India. And it's funny, because I remember her saying, my agent saying, please don't go to an ashram and grow a beard and not come back. Yeah. And I kind of did, except for the beard, because this is all I can grow. I can't really grow. So I did. I went to India looking for answers. And what I noticed, like, I was enjoying my time I lived in LA for a year and a half before living in New York. And I was enjoying it. Like, I had a beautiful apartment on the Hudson River. Like, my place faced the Statue of Liberty. Like, I was running down the Hudson River every day. Like, I was fit. It was an amazing accomplishment, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I went to India to go, you know, I was already doing yoga for years. So I went to India. I was like, you know what, I'll go to India and I'll just get an agency there for the side. And, you know, 3 months ended up turning into 2 years. And I traveled extensively through India. And I rode a motorcycle called a Royal Enfield. You probably have them in. Yeah. And I had a Royal Enfield, and, you know, I took a backpack. And whenever I got booked for a job, I would take off a week. And I'd just take a backpack and a diary, and I'd be doing meditation, yoga, and just reflecting on what it is I wanted and what it is that I wanted to serve. And throughout the journey of India, I went to so many places. From, like I said, the modeling took me all over the place. So I went from the south from Kerala all the way up to Himalayas, to Leh Ladakh. Like, where the air was so thin you couldn't run or walk faster than, you know, 5 kilometers without losing your breath, because the air was so thin. Yeah. And you know, I remember going to Leh Ladakh, going, you know what, I'm just going to take some time out. And I was really looking to go within and find the answers. And I decided, you know what, there's a Vipassana, and it's a silent Vipassana, I'm not sure if you know what it is, but Vipassana is silent meditation where you don't speak. Okay, yeah. And we did that, and I remember seeing, like, there was 10 or 15 people there, and noticing my thoughts about these people, because you couldn't talk to them before you met them. So you have up all these assumptions about what these people would do and what they would sound like, and you have these stories. And it was such an interesting game because you realize how much you make assumptions, and that's the third agreement in the fourth agreement. Don't make assumptions, because you never know what's going on in the head of somebody else.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, have the courage to ask exactly what you want to avoid misunderstanding and drama. And I noticed I was making assumptions about certain people. I was like, oh, that guy looks like he's mean, or he's this, or oh, that girl seems really nice. And there were nothing like that after we finished the course. And that was the epiphany I had, like, when I was in that Vipassana course. Like, I was like, I'm going to teach yoga and I'm going to go deeper with my coaching. And that's what happened. I ended up traveling throughout India, doing more studying, keep studying my life coaching course. And the biggest thing that shifted for me was my attitude of gratitude. Because when I was in India, coming from New York, in New York, I was very much in tune with a lot more materialistic things. And when I got to India, it really grounded me so hard, to the point where it was like, I noticed the kids that were in the slums walking past me every day, and me running to the gym. And I used to run to this slum, and every day these kids would go, "Uncle, uncle," and they'd try and play with me, and I'd play with them and say what's up and kick the soccer ball with them. And they were so happy with it all, and they had nothing. And it just smacked me back into reality. Like, these kids have nothing, and I'm in the States, and I'm constantly going for more, more, more. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said before, as long as I'm not attached to it, and that doesn't create my happiness. And the more I got that, the more I got into connecting to my body and being happy with the little things I had and grateful for the little things I had, the more I created more abundance and more freedom in that space.
Yeah.
And I decided I'm not going to go back to the States.
Yeah.
So it didn't align with my values, and that's where I was going. It didn't align with my values, and at the time I didn't even know what my values were, but I just knew it wasn't sitting right with my gut.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then what do you, from that whole experience, what did you then find your values to be, for you to then propel into the next stage of coaching?
Straight after that, I figured, like, I'm not going to go back to the States, and I decided that I had the question in my mind before going to India, and I always wonder why some things are said. And I remember my booker saying, "Oh, please don't go into an ashram and not come back." And I was like, wow, I wonder if she didn't say that, would I have came back? And, when I think about my values, I was like, what do I want? What is going to fulfill me? What's going to light up my heart space? And, I'm really big on values, and this is what I teach in acceptance and commitment therapy. It's about values. How do you align yourself with your values? When I did my values, one of my values was integrity. It was family. It was courage, flow, consistency, and self-knowledge. And integrity was a massive thing of mine, because I was like, am I being in integrity with me right now? And clearly I wasn't, because I wasn't in flow. And there's another value of mine, which is flow. Is when I'm in flow, things come to me naturally and consistently, and I move with passion, and I move with, that feeling of excitement. And, when I'm doing something, I'm talking about possibility and growth and this and that, and not just like, yes, I'm doing this and I'm just going here. And it got to that point where I was doing shoots just for the money, and I was booking campaigns, and I was getting phone places, but I still wasn't satisfied. And that's when I had to question. I was like, this isn't really serving me.
Yeah. I think that probably resonates with a lot of people, because a lot of people are doing things that for the sake of doing it, because they've always done it. And that, more than likely, that's probably the number one thing, is their jobs. Because obviously you see a lot of people, I'm sure if you ask a lot of people as well, especially in London, if you see them, their faces on the tube going to work in the morning and coming back, it's very miserable. And it's like, for a fact that you don't like this. So how would someone who knows that they don't like what they're doing figure out what their values are? Because I think it seems like that's the sticking point. When you figure those out, then you can actually start thinking in line with them, and then start making your decisions and your thoughts align with that. So how would you advise someone to do that?
So I have a core. I mean, I have a sheet that I go through with my clients where they get to choose from 300 values, and then they break it down. They just highlight whatever values they that speak to them in that moment, and then we break it down, and we break it down to the top 24 values. And from that top 24, we hone down to the values you think you need in order to be the best version of yourself. And we break those top 24 down to your top 6 values. And then from that, we choose out of your top 6, the top 3 that you're going to master. Now, another way you can do it, which is really easy that your listeners can go and do themselves, is think of 5 people or 6 people that is super inspiring to them. And then I want you to write down 6 to 8 values that you love about that person. And what you will see is there's a correlation between the 5 or 6 people you chose. Those are the values that you want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I've heard that saying before, that when you admire something in someone else, it's because you already have that inside you. And so yes. Then I guess it shines light on, your inner self, which you might not be able to easily see. So that's a great exercise.
Yeah, that's an awesome exercise to do, because when you start to see that, it's like you're like, why is it that I'm drawn to this person? What is it that lights me up? Why is it that I want to be around this person? Yeah. There's something that's speaking to you inside. It's connecting to your heart, and that's what your values is. It's your core compass. It's what drives you. You know what happens when you're about to make a decision, and you're like, I don't know if I should do this, and you ignore it, and then later on you're like, something bad happens, and you're like, I shouldn't have done it. I should have listened. And that's you ignoring your gut. That's all that is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, in terms of the relationship coaching that you do now, what are the biggest issues or the most consistent issues you've seen between the couples or the individuals that you've coached, and how do you think you've be able to best advise them to overcome that if some of the listeners are facing a similar sort of thing?
So it's funny you say, because relationship coaching, I specialize in relationship with the self. Oh, okay. And what that means, so what that means is, how can I have the best relationship with myself? But that also transcribes into couples.
Okay.
So, for example, when the biggest thing that I see with relationships in general is the lack of responsibility taken for how they show up. This is one of the biggest problems. And if we realize that we are creating everything that comes to us, we will definitely, and take responsibility for it, we will definitely recreate our future to a future we want to have, instead of just creating from the old patterns that we keep creating from the past. So, the biggest thing, like I said, I like to go through is responsibility and blame. Knowing when I'm taking responsibility or when I'm blaming, because you can either only be in one or the other. You're either blaming someone outside of yourself for their circumstance, or you're blaming yourself. This is what we do as human beings. This is what I used to do. I used to be the biggest critic, perfectionist. I used to beat myself up every time I did something wrong. And what would that do? It would put me and keep me stuck. And I think, yes, you got to be harsh on yourself, because that's how I grew up. I grew up with a very critical father. But if you really get that that's not serving you, and you take responsibility for it, okay, cool. I noticed I took responsibility for that, and now I'm going to change it. And now I'm going to take a new charge, right?
Yeah.
That's going to shift how you view relationships. The other thing, is when you understand you create it, you're creating it, your perception shifts. It shifts entirely, because you're like, I notice that I'm creating this again. I'm creating this story again. When you get caught up in those thoughts again, I notice I'm doing the same story. Noticing the stories. Letting go of the stories. And this is the thing, a lot of people don't want to do. They don't want to take responsibility. Because when you were a child, Vipul, I don't know if you got siblings. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest of 3. So I've got a younger brother who's 22 and another one is 14.
Yeah, so you would have grown up when, your parents come home, who's responsible for this? And everybody points at each other, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to take responsibility, because back then, if you took responsibility, you get a spanking, or you get in trouble. So people think that responsibility is a burden, when it's actually the opposite. It's our freedom.
Mm.
When I take responsibility for how things are going, even if it's happened externally, guess what? I created it. If I'm in Bali, right? And this is a great example, because this happens all the time. I notice when people come to Bali, and they get on a scooter. Like, I've rode a motorcycle for years, so I knew how to ride a bike. But there's people that will come to Bali, and they come to Bali, and then they'll go out and they'll drink, and then they'll get in an accident, and they created a mess. And the mess is, I haven't got insurance, and I'm riding a bike, and I've been in an accident. And it's like, how, if you didn't take responsibility for in the first place, and get yourself trained up, and know the rules and regulations, that wouldn't have happened in the first place. Now, this is also that happens when people aren't even drinking, and they go and ride a scooter, and they've never ridden a scooter before, and they just think they're just going to go into this traffic, not knowing what's going on. It takes a split second of you not being present, or you not being in alignment, and boom, an accident happens. And this is how we are creating everything that's coming towards us. It's recognizing, hey, whenever, even if you're not even riding a scooter, even if you're at home and something happens, I walked into the table the other day, I wasn't being present.
Yeah.
I'm creating it.
Yeah.
Or I dropped a glass. I wasn't focusing right now. It's like every single thing is telling us something. Like my mother, what happened? My mum basically went through a stage. She was going through a really tough stage in her life, and she went through this stage where my mum was walking the dog with my dad, and Lucy, my dog, ran across her, and she tripped and she broke her arm. And I was like, okay. At the time, my mum was overweight. She wasn't in alignment with her health. Like, things are happening, and she couldn't hold herself up, and she fell and she broke her arm. Anyway, she recovered, and 6 weeks later, what happened was, she basically, 6 weeks later, she tripped and broke her finger down the stairs. And I said to my Mum, something's not in alignment right now. I was like, you need to step back, stop whatever you're doing, and check in with what's happening inside of you, because what's happening outside of you is no accident. And I think people really need to get that. Pay attention to it, right? No one can have bad luck all the time. There's no such thing as, I don't even believe in luck, to be honest. I'm creating my luck. Luck is opportunity meets preparation. That's what luck is. So it's like, if people really get clear with that, like, you can't keep having bad luck all the time. You're creating it. So if I'm creating it, I take responsibility. Okay, what else do I want to create then? Because I'm the driver. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for sure. And it's a change in perspective that's hard to take on board, but once you do, it definitely does give you freedom, because it gives you the control back. You feel like you can make all the decisions, and that you're not a victim anymore. You're not a victim of circumstance, and life isn't happening. That whole saying, life isn't happening to you, for you. And that is very simple, but then you start seeing everything differently. Every situation, every circumstance, everyone you meet, you see it very differently, because even if it's a quote unquote negative situation or a person, you think, it's happening for me. So I'm being taught something here. I'm being told to take something away from this. So you try and find value in everything that you do then from that point.
Absolutely. And you will start to draw people in that align with your frequency and your values too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so talking about Bali, I was just wondering if you could quickly break down, like, if someone was to come there to your retreat, what would it typically feel like, and what would be the experience that they'd go through?
So our retreats, we focus on the masculine and feminine energy. So we wake up in the morning, we start with a high intense workout, either it's boxing or a boot camp. That's to get your fire, the energy high up, and high intensity workout in the morning, right? Straight after that, you go and do your meditation, which I will teach you guys on transcendental meditation. You learn how to allow your thoughts to come without judging them, right? Straight after that, they would go into have their breakfast. It's a vegetarian breakfast. And then straight after that, we go into a workshop. And this is where we start breaking down from the very start, like what is it, why they came there. And I'm already getting the intake forms before, so I already kind of have an idea.
Yeah.
But our retreats are very experimental. Like we get you to do exercises because I want to see how you show up in the moment. Energy doesn't lie. And in that moment, I'm watching your behavior, how you answer versus how you respond versus how you react. And the thing with our retreats, like they're not your kind of retreat where you just come and just chill and sit by the pool and go for a surf and do a yoga session. Although you do yoga in the afternoon, that's for your feminine energy. Our retreats are there to give you the tools to really see how you show up in life and then start practicing them outside. So we give our guests a few options. They get to choose from a juice cleanse where they don't eat for the day, and that brings up a lot of stuff because people like to emotionally eat to distract themselves, have sex, alcohol, or drugs. So we take away something. First, they're out of their comfort zone. We take them out of the comfort zone in the retreat, and then we give them no food. Now people are like, what? we give them a juice cleanse, and that's just to get them and to reset their body. And then from that, we take them to one of our naturopath and doctors where they get their bloods taken, and we get to see their red blood cells versus their white blood cells, and we get to see if they have parasites, because you would not believe what a parasite can do to your gut health, how that affects your brain, how that affects your decision making, how that affects how much you focus, and even how much you are receiving when you're eating great. You could be eating the best food and not actually getting the nutrients from it because your body can't take it because of the parasites eating all of that, good bacteria. So yeah, and then on one of the days we take you guys to a waterfall where we do a let going exercise of sitting in this waterfall and releasing. And this is if you guys don't have a waterfall, you guys can do this at home actually, where you go into a shower, and I prefer to make it cold because it's hot in Bali, but I'm not sure how it is in London. And you run the shower over you and you visualize it. You're washing away these things that have been attaching themselves to you, and you allow them to flow away. Now, the beautiful thing about waterfalls is that energy is carried with that. People go to waterfalls because there's so much energy involved with it. There's power, there's raw power, this thing that's flowing. What happens when the body is stagnant? What happens when water is stagnant? It starts to smell. So this is why we need to be around things that are running water. There's great energy there. We move it instead of holding on to it. So with our we have a 3-day, 5-day, and 8-day package. And what people will expect is they will get tools and strategies to take home with them along the way. This is not a quick fix, by the way. And I tell this to everybody. This is a retreat that's going to open you up. It's going to get you vulnerable. It's going to be transformational, but it's also going to be tough and fun at the same time. Yeah.
No, that sounds amazing. And is it done in? It sounds like it's done in groups, is it, or is it individual?
Yes, we do have individual packages, but they're a lot more expensive. But we do them in small groups, so 5 to 10 max.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. No, so just to wrap things up, last 3 questions that I like to ask everyone, I want to put to you now. And the first one being, if you had all the knowledge you have now, with everything that you know and you've been through, what would you tell your 18-year-old self if you were to tell him anything?
It's going to be okay. And to not be so harsh on yourself. And if I was to say that, and the reason why I say that is because I was so critical and such a perfectionist that it denied me from experiencing more things because I was waiting for it to be perfect. So I would tell myself that, not be so harsh. and to give him a bit of acceptance and some love and support.
Okay. And if you were to write anything in a time capsule now for your great grandchildren to read, what would you want it to say?
From me?
Yeah, from you.
I would say Vincit que se vincit, which means he who conquers himself conquers all.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because that's very true. Yeah, it all comes back to mastering yourself and figuring out who you are before you can actually go out in the world and produce the things that need to be produced for impact or value.
Absolutely. And if they learn that from an early stage, imagine what that would be like.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I try and, just on the side note, I try and teach that to my brother now. You know, he's 14, he's going through school, but he's so lucky to have like me and my brother who are going through heavy amounts of personal development and constantly reading, because it naturally influences him and he wants to join in. He doesn't want to feel left out. He wants to join in, but all we're doing is reading and talking about topics like this, and so he naturally becomes involved, and that translates into the way that translates into the type of student he is. So yeah.
He's going to be, you watch how much he's going to progress.
I can see in the way that he speaks already at 14, so I'm excited to see his progression, you know, because I only started reading and talking this way over the last few years. And at 14 I had no idea what was going on in the world, so yeah.
That's awesome.
But the last and final question is, I mean, you're 90 years old now, Emile. You're looking back at your life. What would you want your legacy to be?
I would want my legacy to be a bunch of, or an academy, I would say. An academy where there's retreats and people come, and it's a center, and it's not just one type of kind of healing and training. It's all types, because I don't believe there's only one way to do this. I would love for it to be a whole different types of holistic healings, teachings, and cultural backgrounds that are connected, that are teaching this to children.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That would definitely be my dream, to children, because that's where it starts. And if we can start doing it with children now, instead of keep trying to correct it later in humans, it's going to shift so much. No, it's true, because a lot of what we do, you know, once you become conscious of it, a lot of what you do is start to correct the things that went wrong in the early years. And so if you can fix it.
Yeah, exactly, trying to fix it. You know, it's that whole thing about being programmed in the first 7 or 8 years of your life, and so if you can shift it at an early age, then it becomes much easier as you go down your path. So no, thank you so much for taking the time to speak today. It's been an amazing conversation.
Thanks so much, Vipul. It's been a pleasure, mate.
No, definitely, and I'm glad that you took the time out. So thank you once again, and I'm sure that we'll speak again soon.
Sounds good, mate.